All right. Welcome. I can officially say hello. Welcome to Ask Me Anything Live for, what are we? October 5th. Holy cow. October 5th.
I know.
How is this happening?
I don't know. It's just too fast. Too fast.
It is too fast. So Huda, tell me about yourself. Where are you in the world? How can I help you today?
I would love a little help, and Alina is the one who got me to contact you.
Awesome. I'm such a fan of Alina.
I know. I just started working with her.
Oh, good.
And so the first question I had her, she's like, I have a good friend, Heather, and she would know how to answer that. So, and that was just a couple of days ago.
Awesome. We'll tell her hello if you talk to her again.
I will, for sure.
So what's your question? How can I help?
My question is, I'm getting very mixed messages. So I've been a speaker since 1990, so a long time. I've been in the speaking industry, and I've known about intellectual property. But the question that I have is, now I'm working with teens, and I'm doing a series of talks for teen girls, and I wanted to use some pictures. And I know how to get from the places, but there are some Getty images that are really great. There's some Photoshop images that are amazing, and I don't even know how to get, like, the Getty images for each one. It's over $750, so it's cost prohibitive. But sometimes the girls relate to the one where the certain celebrity's doing this versus doing like the, so it's like such great photos. So just that. So what can I use? Is a magazine advertisement acceptable for me to show? Like, here, this magazine, you see how they're objectifying the women here, you know?
Right. So, I mean, a couple things. So what you're talking about is basically copyright use, and it, wades into the waters of, there's called fair use, which is an exemption from the copyright laws. So normally the rule is, and this is what I tell people, if it belongs to somebody else, if somebody else created it, if you did not pay for the right to use it, don't use it, right? That's the starting point. Now, you're right that you can obtain a license for use, and there's a lot of places online that do that. You may look around to see whether or not you can find what you're looking for in some of the free sites and some of the, so there's like Pictobay, there's Unsplash, right? There's a whole bunch of others, but I know you're looking for really, really targeted material. You could try, there are, I'm trying to think of I have one in mind and I can't remember the name of the site. It does a lot of images, and I think you pay maybe a monthly fee. I think there's ones where you can pay a monthly fee, so the cost is not as high, and then download a certain number of images within that monthly fee, right? And they've got a database you can search. So you could search confident woman, a woman with hands on her hips. Like, you could do very, very specific searches to illustrate what you're talking about, versus like depressed woman or shy woman, or, you know what I mean? Like, whatever kind of body posture you're talking about. So that's one of the places that I would start, is look at some of the main image databases and see whether or not a monthly membership would work. Because Getty Images is going to be like top of the line. Right? That's like, you're going to pay a lot of money for an image there, versus some of the others. You may not get the exact image that you want, but you're going to have a much better price. The other thing is demonstrate it yourself.
Well, the thing that I was curious is, like, some of the advertisements. So if it's in a magazine and they're advertising, and it's like Jimmy Choo shoes, but it has what I'm looking for. So can I not just hold up my magazine and say, see?
If it was done, so let's get back to the concept of fair use. If it was done for educational purposes, for satire, for news purposes, the answer would probably be yes. Yes, you could do that and point that out. When you're doing it commercially to make money as part of a class or a course, no. The answer is no. You're using it for your business, and you did not make that content. So,
so even though education, because I was told education, of course you can, but education if I'm not getting paid.
Yes, is very different. Education for the public good is very different than education you're getting paid for.
Thank you.
Yeah. So my recommendation to you, and here's the thing, even the girls that you're speaking to, if they're young, they're not unintelligent. you could have them do a project of picking up any magazine and doing their own analysis, and you walk them through it verbally of like,
Yeah.
you know, you're going to see ads that look like this and just describe them, you know, and
Mm-hmm.
versus something that looks like this. Like, you can still set the stage. You could do your own imagery, like you could model for them certain poses, certain things if you're talking about image and body consciousness and all of that. You know, invite them to observe
Mm-hmm.
media around them and make their own
Definitely.
decisions, right, around
Yeah.
whether or not it's something that harms women or supports women's body
Yes.
confidence. And, but, you know, they'll be able to
Okay.
figure that out. But you can provide some of the background training through, you know, describing it, through, you know, modeling some of it yourself, through, you know, you could certainly describe an ad that you've seen, not show it, but like,
Mm-hmm.
oh, I'm looking at this ad and it's for this, and the woman is doing that. You know what I mean? There's
Yeah.
other ways that you can translate that information and not put your business at jeopardy.
Okay. Thank you so
Yeah.
much.
Yeah, absolutely. I know. The other thing, especially around, and I don't know, I'm sure there's a whole variety of ways that you can illustrate what it is that you're teaching, but you know, you could hire an illustrator, right?
Oh, true.
You
Yeah,
know,
yeah, yeah,
so if
yeah.
you had, you know, some instructional materials that you're putting together, one of the best ways to get around copyright issues is just create your own
Okay.
content. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that would go as well for any of the like the digitized photoshopping, because I wanted to show them how any
Mm.
celebrity, how it starts out like this and their eyes are not like this naturally. And
Oh my gosh. Well,
yeah,
those girls are probably already
yeah.
aware of the various apps they can install right on their phone that thins their waist. And, you know,
Yes.
like you could just research the apps. They know, like, you don't even have to show them this stuff.
Yeah.
You can just, and there are actually celebrities on Instagram that will speak out about it. Like, will actually
Yes.
show you a before and after picture. Right. And
Yeah.
so I think your job probably is more related to the awareness of it and
Yeah,
having,
definitely.
right, educated girls
Mm-hmm.
that choose not to buy into that culture. But
Yeah.
yeah, get creative around how you actually illustrate that for your own education, because you don't want to be doing
Yeah.
amazing work and then also get in trouble for it. Yeah.
Amen. Thanks so
Yes,
much.
you're welcome. Well, awesome. I love what you do, Huda. Keep up the great work.
Appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, I'm going to switch to gallery view. I see that we have Celeste, we have, and I'm not seeing a couple names, so you're welcome to just unmute or pop a question into the chat. Celeste, and then Noonan, MD, and I see M. Bong. Welcome, you guys. Good to see you. Celeste, hello.
Hi, Heather. How are you?
I'm so good. How are you?
I am well. I
Good,
am well.
good. So where are you in the world?
So I am in the world of creating a website
Oh,
and
awesome.
remembering the importance of not stepping on toes that'll get us into legal trouble.
Yeah,
And so it's probably simple, but not for me
yeah.
because I just don't have a point of reference in terms of even selecting domain names. And when you talk to Hoda, you answered some of those questions in terms of what can you put on your website, what can't you put on your website. So my first question is what needs to be trademarked, right? I
Okay.
read on what it is, a trademark is in terms of phrases and things like that. And color to the cover was one that I had started down the road of looking into trademarking it. But because I'm so new
Mhm.
at creating business concepts, I began to think that it may be something that has a expiration date to it. Um, does it really speak to anything that people would understand, right? Because your website and it should attract people when they do a Google. So
Mhm.
what are they going to Google in order to find you? So if
Mhm.
your business is really being a life coach, how does that even relate to life coaching? So
Yeah.
in the midst of all that confusion, if you can talk to me a little bit about what things really should be trademarked, how significant is a domain name? Should the
Mhm.
domain name be the same as your email name? Um,
Good questions. Yes, there's a lot there. So, and just remind me, Celeste, so where are you physically in the world? Are you in the US?
I am in Chicago, Illinois.
Okay. All right. Awesome.
You're in California, correct?
I'm actually in Seattle. So, you know, I
Okay.
consider Californians my neighbors, but yes, we're at the
Okay.
same coast, but yeah, I'm north of it.
Yes.
So let's start. I'm going to start with the domain and the trademark issue, because a lot of people, like, the good thing is that because you're early in your journey, you're taking the time to think about this stuff. Some people just choose it and get moving, and then later they have to backtrack. And so when it comes to selecting a domain and choosing a business name, right? It sounds like that's kind of folded in there, is like, what is the name of your business going to be? Searchability is definitely something to think about. It doesn't have to be the determining factor when it comes to actually choosing the business name, because your domain doesn't necessarily have to be the same as your business name. So for example, I have clients that will have an LLC that is their business, and it's, you know, 123 Media or whatever. It
Yes.
has nothing to do with their actual brand name.
Correct.
Right? So the question I would have, you know, when people are at the point of even selecting a business name is, you know, one, what kind of business are you developing? Is it a lifestyle business? And that's not a derogatory term, but is it a business that you want to work in basically as kind of a personal brand for a long time and do work that you love? That's a lifestyle business. Or is it a business that you want to build and sell in 5 years or 10 years, right? Is it a startup? Is it something that you want to franchise? Maybe you've got a model of coaching or something that you want to build, but you think that you could set up a franchise model with it, right? In those instances, it probably shouldn't be a business name based around your personal brand, based around, you know, your name. And I can't remember what name you put out there, but this is just one of the things I have people consider when they're thinking about selecting a name, right? What was the name that you were thinking about? Was it trademarking, or was it the domain name?
Trademarking. It was the trademarking and the domain. So I have an LLC that was originally created to do something totally different, which is Right Brands, right?
Mm-hmm.
Totally different. It was broker work for cookies, right? So as that, I figured, do I really need a new LLC, or just morph the description somewhat? And so now I've moved more into the life coaching.
Mm-hmm.
And even with that, my son found a company that created a logo. And so I said, well, can we use it? I mean, it was just the lettering. We said how we wanted to look, and we picked the colors, but the word is a common word. It's evolve. And he says, well, I don't know. I mean, they created it for us. Does it belong to us? Do I need to find if there's one that's similar? Does it matter? So it's like all of these things that really having that hearing from you made me think twice before doing something and not knowing what the impact would be.
Yeah, no, that's right. And, to your question about the logo, so was it through like Upwork or Fiverr or something?
It was I'm not even sure what company. He sort of found 3 companies that do
Got
it.
Yeah.
And then,
and some
and gave a
companies will do
description.
that, like they'll have an array of logos that they might modify slightly for your brand. So when you purchase like a logo, or for people working with independent contractors through a platform like Upwork or Fiverr, same thing. You want to make sure that there's language in place, that one, this is original work, right? They have not duplicated somebody else's work, and that you have either ownership of the logo, like outright ownership, meaning that the copyright transfers to you, you've got the right to essentially be the sole owner. The alternative is that whoever created the logo owns the copyright, and you obtain a license to use it, right? And so that's the other option. And so you can have situations where if they're the copyright holder on that logo, or the trademark owner, and a lot of people are not going to be running out and getting trademarks on that, right? So the copyright, truthfully, I'm sorry, wouldn't actually even apply to the logo. But what you want to make sure is that they don't retain ownership, that you do, because if they do, they can license it, and they can license it to multiple people. And truthfully, a lot of people in the logo world aren't even going to honestly know what they're doing in that domain, right? They're just artists and they're creating logos. Some will have an understanding of how intellectual property works, but a lot just want to do the work. Hello, Jason. And I see Annalise also joined us. we're talking about trademarks right now and logos. So you just want to make sure that there's language in place that when you purchase a logo for your company or you have somebody design one for you, that you become the sole owner of that intellectual property, which means you could go obtain a copyright for that, you know, if it's a piece of work or a visual or whatever, or if it's a logo that you get a trademark around it.
Okay.
You know, but it also, when we're talking about trademarks, you have to understand that there are trademarks that are worthy of protection, and then there are a ton, like there are, you know, logos and taglines and business names and phrases that are worthy of protection, and then there are a ton that are not, that wouldn't really meet the standard because they are descriptive, they are generic. There's other things in the marketplace that looks like that. And so, you know, the quick background around our trademark system is that it was developed to protect the consumer. So trademarks are literally, they originated as the stamp that merchants would put on their physical goods when they sold them way back in the day. Like that was their trademark, so that you knew you were buying this particular thing from an individual who had that consistent stamp on all of his work, right? It's a little bit like, are you buying a Pepsi or are you buying a Coke, right?
Coke.
People want to know. Coke, I'm with you. So it's, the trademark system is really there to protect the consumer. And so what it means is you don't want to have a mark or a business name or a tagline or a phrase that you're obtaining a trademark registration around that would cause consumer confusion in the marketplace. And what that means is you have to be aware of what's already there. So to answer your question, yes, you would need somebody to help you run a search on that logo to make sure that it doesn't infringe any existing marks, and to see whether or not it actually would, you know, essentially qualify for a trademark registration.
Is it necessary to have a trademark before you use it?
It's not necessary, but you run the risk of stepping on toes if somebody in the marketplace already has a mark that looks like that.
Okay.
And you unwittingly are using yours without knowing that theirs is protected.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. You mentioned in terms of the domain versus the business name, and so the two don't necessarily have to be related. The domain is more of the brand.
No, that's right. So as an example, you know, I've actually technically got 3 businesses set up, but 2 are actually like active operating companies. One is my legal practice. One is my online legal business, right? Legal information and education business. The name of that one is actually HJP Strategies, LLC, but my online branding is Legal Website Warrior, right? So your domain and your brand, and I have a trademark around the Legal Website Warrior, doesn't have to be your formal incorporated name of your business. Right. So this is where, and to some extent, there can be some advantages to not having those things be the same, right? Especially if you're at all concerned about asset protection or other things, where having a difference can make it a little bit harder for somebody to chase you down and track you down through your entity. But anyways, you know, it doesn't mean that there's an extra layer of protection. Some people have no problem finding out what your actual business, your incorporated business is called. But there's a lot of businesses, especially in the online space, that have a registered brand, like a trademark registration around a brand name that does not, that brand is owned by the business, but it's not the same name as the business entity itself.
Okay. And do you think that the email address should be the same as the website address? With the
I
same
think so. It
connecting.
creates, yes, it creates continuity, which you should care a lot about if you're developing a brand, especially a personal brand. You know, one of the worst things that people do is have these silly email addresses that they use for business, and it really does impact the way people view your professionalism. If you've got an online business that lives at a certain domain, you should have your email addresses attached to that domain if that's the entity through which you're doing work.
Okay, so for like a GoDaddy, you know, then you have to have your website housed somewhere. So that would be the company that does the domain.
Well, yeah. So GoDaddy is a host, right? So it would host your domain. You can usually purchase your domain through a place like GoDaddy, you can host it there as well, which I don't actually recommend with GoDaddy. They do a lot of funny stuff around charging for emails and charging for extra stuff. I'd find one of the more streamlined hosts. I mean, and not that I use a really fancy host. I just use Bluehost. They've been very consistent, and I've gotten good service through Bluehost. But I wouldn't actually purchase and host your domain through the same provider. So you could purchase your domain through GoDaddy, and then you actually can host that domain somewhere else.
Okay. How do you identify a good host?
Just research your needs. Do you care about a website host that has, very, very available telephone service? Some people do.
Yes.
Right? Yeah. So you're going to want to read reviews online and, Google, because there's lots of tech sites that will review, top 10 small website hosts for 2020 or whatever. Go start reading some of those reviews, because you'll get to know what people think of HostGator versus Bluehost versus GoDaddy versus, any of the others out there. And just, you have to pick what's important to you as a consumer of those services, because people feel differently about it, right? Some people want a lot of add-ons and bells and whistles, and other people want basic hosting, but they want great telephone support. So just know what you're looking for, and then just make a choice. You can always change it as well. You can move your website if you need to.
All right. And so do you have a list of what your charges are for doing trademarks? Do you have some place?
Yeah, so currently I'm not doing trademarks. I will coach people on assessing their intellectual property, getting it prepared, but I would actually refer you to a colleague for trademark registrations.
Okay.
And if you want to email me, let me just pop my email into the chat. That way you can follow up, and if you need a referral, just say, hey, Heather, I'd love a referral for trademark registrations.
Okay.
And so, and trademarks, understand that, because a lot of people will also ask this, should I get a trademark before I begin even launching something into commerce? There's different ways, and I see that somebody else, Jason, you had a question on trademarks, on the registered trademark. And so if you want to open up, ask me your question and let me see if I can handle these together.
Yeah, it's along the same lines of so I've developed, I have an LLC, but I have a different kind of brand that I'm forming. And the brand now has a podcast. I got the .com. It's kind of, yeah. And so now I'm wondering, do I get it trademarked? And if so, I've looked into doing it legally, but should I just do it myself? And I know from an attorney's perspective, it's like, I might miss the international or other areas. And so really my two questions. What's the most efficient way to do it? And what's a good price range to be looking out for?
Great questions. So, there are some options in the marketplace when it comes to trademark registrations, right? And first of all, congrats on your podcast and developing this new brand. So exciting. And, for people that are at the point of looking at a trademark, congratulations, you've got something that you're interested in building and protecting. And I think that's something that's totally worth celebrating. Trademarks, the path to creating a registered trademark, there's different options. Plenty of people do just attempt it themselves, right? And you can make your way through that system. It's a little cumbersome, and you kind of have to go through the trainings. But if you go to uspto.gov, which is United States Patent and Trademark Office, right? They've got a whole bunch of instructional videos. They try to help people who are going to attempt to do it themselves. And so you can go take advantage of that. I would say it's worth the time to go through that instruction and probably do some additional Googling on the internet and finding other people who have YouTube videos about it, who are willing to provide some support through instruction, because any amount of effort at the front end that helps you do a better job through that process could save you loads and loads of heartache on the back end. And I'll give you some examples. There's also services out there like Trademarkia, right? And I've talked to people who've used something like that, which is basically the equivalent of kind of a big box, trademark service. You don't have an attorney actually looking at your individual filing. It's like a law clerk or an admin essentially just pushing paperwork through. And so sometimes in my mind, you might as well do it yourself, except that they've actually been through the process before. You have to respond sometimes in the process of obtaining a registered mark, because there's two bases for the application, right? One is that it's already in use. You're already using it in commerce, which it sounds like you are, Jason. And the other one is intend to use, right? So for somebody who's being very proactive, saying, hey, I'm going to launch this brand, I'm going to do this thing, and I just want to be first in line. I don't want somebody to take my idea and implement it, right? So, but I also tell people, like, don't be afraid to launch, because first use in commerce does put you first in line. But make sure that you are moving quickly as possible to create a registration, right? So you'll see people put the TM after a phrase or a name, right? You see the little TM. That's intend to use or intend to register, right? So you put that if you intend to get a registration around that mark. Once you actually have the registration cleared and you've been approved, then you can convert that to the R in the circle. But I've had a couple, let me just talk about a couple of scenarios involving clients who became my clients, but before they did, had some intellectual property issues, including trademark stuff. So one, he tried to get a trademark himself, either himself or maybe he used trademark, I can't remember. But midway through the process, the trademark officer responded and basically asked for his approval on an exception related to his mark. And the short version of the story is that he said okay, because he didn't understand that approving that landed him on the supplemental registry versus the principal registry. And so there's two registries, and a lot of people don't know that. The principal registry is what you want to be on, because that's the one that says, I have exclusive rights to use this phrase or this logo or this business name in the marketplace because I'm on the principal registry. If you're on the supplemental registry, by very nature of being on that registry, you are not presumed to have exclusive use, have exclusive rights to that mark. So it's so he ended up on the supplemental registry. He then went on to build basically a phenomenal brand that has a worldwide following. We put like $2.8 million worth of advanced fee publishing agreements in place for his last book. And he cannot get international trademarks because they look back to the US trademark and they say, but you're on the supplemental registry, which means you don't have exclusive use, which means you can't get a trademark in our country. So even though his brand is new, he has a cult following, he's made millions of dollars in this business, and he cannot get foreign trademarks because of this struggle. And so it's a real issue. And what I tell people is, like, yes, I know folks who have been through this process on their own, they did fine. I've known folks who used trademarkia and they did fine. And I've also known people who've totally screwed it up, right? Or have had trademarkia totally screw it up. So the option for either scenario happening is there. And so that's the trick and it's why I tend to just ask somebody, how committed are you to this brand? How committed are you to, investing in your business, even in the early stage, in order to save yourself tens of thousands of dollars, potentially hundreds of thousands of dollars down the road? Because if none of us know, like, is our brand going to be something that takes off and that we have a terrific following for? None of us can really predict that. Of course, we're all working to create something significant. And some people really hang themselves up in their business by taking a misstep in some of the early processes. And so, that's the best that I can do as far as laying out examples. But an attorney who is experienced in this area can help you evaluate the relative strength of your mark. Like, is it something that you're likely to get a trademark for? Is it likely to end up on the principal registry? Are there maybe slight modifications that you could make that would make it stronger? If you've got a phrase or a business name, sometimes if somebody does a search for you and looks and examines the marketplace, because that's one of the things you want to do, is let's say you have a phrase that's 4 or 5 words. You want to understand, is somebody using a combination of 3 of those words, right? So you're going to do multiple searches around the words that make up your business name or your phrase to see, is somebody else using something similar enough that I would be excluded because we're in the same category, we're in the same classification, right? Because trademarks are based on categories. So there's lots of things to consider, and sometimes a little front end coaching from an attorney who's experienced in this area can help you make a slight modification or improve it in some way that will increase the likelihood that you actually get a registered mark. And they're there with you in the process. So if the trademark officer gets back to you and says, hey, we need additional proof that you're using this in the marketplace, or, is asking you to like make an exception or to your mark, your trademark attorney can help you respond to that in a way that's going to best protect your future chances with that mark versus not necessarily knowing what you're doing and just signing off on something that could inadvertently hurt you, right? So I hope that helps. And I recognize we've got a couple of other people on the phone. Jason, do you have any other questions, or was that helpful?
That was the big one. Perfect timing. Who was speaking? Celeste, I think.
Yeah, lots of questions about trademarks.
I wanted to come on today, and the podcast is just getting warmed up. But I have a community on Facebook with that name. I have a Patreon campaign in that name, and I think that it's probably time to take that next step.
Yeah. Well, it's always time. The question I ask somebody is, would you be devastated if somebody else began using this phrase or name in their business or in commerce, right? The answer is yes.
Yeah.
Then it's time to get it protected. If the answer is like, oh, I assume 10 other people are probably using it because it's generic or descriptive, then no, it may not be protectable, right? And so that's the other point about creating a more powerful registration or a more powerful brand that's likely to be protectable by registration is, how unique is it? How, or does it fall more on the line of being descriptive or generic? You want it to be unique, and that will make it a more protectable mark. Okay, so welcome, Wayne. I see Annalise. There was an iPhone number that popped off, but maybe they can come back if they've got questions. Anybody else with questions?
Hi, it's Bong. I have a question about website terms and conditions and privacy policies. So I just established an LLC for physical therapy. And so I'm in the process of building the website. And thank you. I'm curious about like, how does that work? I don't know. Is that something that you can create? I looked through the website. I couldn't find like an individualized package for those things, or is that something that I should check with my domain host?
No, your domain host will not be able to provide legal terms for your business. That's something that each individual business is responsible for. Bong, where are you located?
I'm in North Carolina.
North Carolina, and it's physical therapy. And the online business that you're creating, is it an extension of your traditional physical therapy business, or is it, because I work with people who are licensed professionals and they're creating what I call an online information or education business, right? Or is this online business just a home base for your physical therapy office?
Yeah, it's just like a informational page for my brick and mortar clinic. I will be offering telehealth services, but yeah, it's I don't have a separate like online.
Yeah, it's not like an online or information. You're not going across state borders and offering information or educational products. Okay. So yeah, for you, so there's, when we talk about website protection, there's a couple things. So I help a lot of people located in a lot of areas, but it's generally in the information and education space, right? They're running a business that crosses over state lines. So it's federal, we're talking about federal law, right? And I help them put website terms and conditions, privacy policies in place, etc. For people who are licensed professionals, you also have this regulatory overlay, right? And that's definitely state by state rules, because your state rules are what govern your licensing, right? You're going to have probably a state board that governs all physical therapists in that state. The best bet for you probably would be to connect with an attorney in your state that understands state licensing rules. Did you say that you were going to do telehealth or not? Are you doing some telehealth right now with physical?
Yeah, I was doing telehealth at the previous practice I was at. So I'm familiar with that. And I am planning to offer that
Right, because you're going to have HIPAA compliance, and some states have a state version of HIPAA laws, and some of those truthfully are more restrictive even than HIPAA. So this is where, because you live really heavily in the regulatory world, and that's generally going to be state law, what I'd want for you is to get connected to an attorney in, did you say North Carolina, North Dakota? North Carolina. Yeah, that would understand specifically the rules that apply to your practice and can help you make sure that, you know, HIPAA compliance is in place, and then any state regulations that are similar to HIPAA are also covered. And if you want, I'm happy to, every once in a while, because I belong to several listservs, I can get referrals even to East Coast attorneys. I mean, I'm happy to reach out on your behalf unless you've otherwise got a connection to a state attorney there.
I have a connection. So I have like my business lawyer, and then I have a connection of a like small business website lawyer, I think. So I can reach out to her.
And you're welcome. If you want to shoot me a message, well, and my email's right there, the info@legalwebsitewarrior.com. I'm also happy to help you take a look. I can usually tell by taking a quick look at somebody's site how much they live in the online space, in case you're like trying to compare attorneys or services. Sometimes though, you can suss it out pretty quickly just in a phone call. Like I would say, reach out to several attorneys and get a phone call scheduled and just ask them, do you help licensed professionals in this state with their website compliance?
Great. Yeah, that's a perfect way to phrase it. Thank you. And I'll also reach out via email too. I appreciate it.
Perfect. Yeah, awesome. Well, congrats, Bong.
Thanks.
Yeah. All right, any other questions? Wayne, you've got an awesome name. Look at those W's. Wayne Wishnowski. I'm not sure how I say the last one. Annalise. Anybody else with questions? You're welcome to unmute. You're also welcome to pop into the chat. I know some people just joined to find out what's going on over here, and you're welcome to just hang out as well, but I generally... Oh, is that Wayne?
This is Wayne. I just changed the name. Noonan. Yeah, I went in and changed that to get it right. But no, I put a note in the chat. I just finished watching the 5 Bucket series this morning that you had.
Oh, got it. Yes. Okay, so you were Noonan. Yes, MD. Perfect. So you went through that training. Awesome.
And I got the business basic quick start. So like I said, I'm just waiting. It should be any day now. I'm just waiting for my website to be finished building, and then get that rolling in the digital world.
Well, congrats. It's a fun space to be. Wayne, are you in Canada? Did we swap emails?
I'm in Columbia, South Carolina.
Okay, so different. Okay.
I'm on the other coast, almost.
Got it. Yes. Well, congrats. And what's your business?
It's I'm going to do digital products right now. I mean, down the road, I might like to get into coaching, but to get everything and get the wheels turning, I'm going to stick with the digital world right now of products and services. So.
Totally. And what are those products and services about?
The products could be self-help. I'm looking at the business, though, actually helping small businesses with marketing. I think especially right now with COVID-19, there's so many people that could use help. I mean, I don't have all the answers. I've got an entrepreneurial class I just did for 8 weeks. It starts tonight. So, I mean, there's a lot of things I'm trying to learn.
Right.
But I think I know a little bit more than some people to be of help right now to go out there and get them moving in the right direction.
Absolutely. Well, you got to start somewhere. Awesome, Wayne. Well, I'm happy to be a resource for you. Reach out at any time if you bump up against any blocks or have any other questions. Is there anything that I can help you with today?
No, like I said, I just finished watching the 5 Buckets, and I just wanted to sit, and I saw that email, so I just thought I'd sit in and listen to your wisdom and your knowledge on what you're on for the small business people out there.
Oh, good. Awesome. Well, and I am happy.
Thank you very much for hosting this.
You're welcome. Yeah, I started this. Well, Jason knows. I think Jason was maybe on one of my early calls. I started actually in March when COVID hit, and it's just something I've done every Monday except for a few holidays. Just as a way to show up and have conversations with people and answer questions where I can. But we can talk, if people want to talk a little bit about website protection, what that looks like and what it takes, I'm happy to spend a minute there if that would help anybody. Otherwise, if there's any other questions, I'm happy to spend some time answering those. We good? Annalise, are you good? I see you're still on, and I know sometimes we end up, fly on the wall this time. I'm just seeing that. Perfect. That's no problem. Well, and on the website protection, I will talk about it just for a minute in case, and I send out recordings of these calls as well to my list. But, you know, generally, and Wayne, this will be helpful for you moving into website stuff. Generally, and I see Celeste might be coming back because I wanted Celeste to hear this as well. Generally, the three parts, the three components of online business that you need to consider protecting, right? There's usually three main functions that we all do. One is publishing information. So Celeste, you're back. We're talking briefly about protecting an online business, what that looks like from a document perspective, right? There's publishing information, there's collecting information, and then there's selling information or selling services, right, that involve your information. So publishing information, right, we all should be doing this. If we're setting ourselves up as experts in our space, right, whether it's through podcasting, whether it's through writing, you know, weekly articles or weekly blogs, maybe you're somebody that goes on video and you do a lot of education through video, right? Publishing is one of the ways that we get our voice out into the world and we help educate people and set ourselves up as the expert. And so the thing about publishing, especially in each of our spaces, is that we can know how we intend our information to be used, but we don't ultimately get to control how it is used. And that's where liability comes in the door. And so when you're talking about publishing information through an online business, this is where website terms and conditions come into play, right? They're not required by law to be online, but if you're a legitimate business, you have them, because inside of those website terms and conditions, you're going to have a whole bunch of different clauses. Some that tell people, here's what you can do with my information. Here's what you can't do, right? So you're going to have limitations around the use and the consumption of that information so that people are not going into the marketplace or turning around and using that information in their own business in ways that you don't want. You're going to have limitations of liability, right? You're going to have certain disclaimers in place, right? Like, you know, you might be educating people on a specific topic related to health, but you are not acting as their medical doctor through that platform, right? Or in Wayne's case, if he's into small business advertising, right? Probably because he's going to be talking business to business, he's not going to be making any claims about people's earnings, or at least shouldn't be. And if he does provide examples, he's going to need an earnings and income disclaimer, right? To say, just because one client achieved this, or because I did this, doesn't mean that this is going to be your result too. And so this is where disclaimers come into play depending on the work that we do. And those should show up both in your website terms and conditions and sometimes separately on your site, depending on the work. So that's publishing information. There's a lot more there, but website terms and conditions play a key role. I tell people they're like the ground rules of your website, right? You let people know what to expect and what they can and can't do. Now, when you're collecting information, again, which we all should be doing, right? We all need to be actively working on growing our databases and getting people to opt in, because there really is a lot of power, and most businesses, they're in the online space, like the database is the asset, right? You have to be able to communicate with people in order to even engage in doing your business marketing or whatever. And so we all should be actively growing lists, but to do that, you have to, and this one by law, you have to have by law a privacy policy that talks about what information do you collect, how do you collect it, why do you collect it, how do you keep it safe, how can people opt out of your database or update their information or have their information removed from your database, right? All the things. Oh, and there's Jason. Jason is awesome. He's been on several of these calls. So the privacy policy is really, really important because it fulfills your obligation as a business owner to let people know what you're doing with their information and how you keep it safe. And so for somebody like Bong, this is particularly important because she really has the potential to capture and collect a lot more information that's really protected information than many of us do, because she's working with people's health, and right, she might have a questionnaire. There's a lot that people can collect related to businesses that pertain to health and nutrition and physical bodies. And so your privacy policy is just an absolute must. Oh, Pumpkin, did you build this?
Hi.
Little gift.
Adorable.
I know, my little 3-year-old, she's so cute. She could literally just live building Legos all day. They're just so brilliant. I love Legos. So privacy policy is an absolute must, and that's the second leg of your stool, right? Data collection. The third leg is the selling of information or the selling of services. Yes, Lego is so fun. And so a lot of people like Wayne selling digital products or courses, right? So it's a little bit like my five legal basics inside of that boot camp, right? It's a digital course that's free, but I still need to have terms around that, right? It's a digital product, a digital offering that somebody can opt into, and they can still go make decisions based on that information. And so, you know, whether you're selling those digital products, whether you're giving them away, whatever it is, you need terms of purchase in place for the things that you sell. And so, some people, this might be selling their services. So they're selling somebody into a live workshop, or they're selling somebody into coaching or client services. Again, you want terms of purchase in place because, one, they define like all of the things that we talked about in regards to what you're providing publicly. So the terms of purchase cover what's generally available to the public, anybody who visits your site. When people opt into something, when they buy something and become a customer, terms of purchase are specific to that sale. So again, you're going to have licensing language. What can they do with that information if you're allowing them to use it, right? What can they not do? You're going to have limitations of liability in regards to the information that's going to be delivered inside of that digital offering or course, whatever it is you're selling. You're going to have, you know, disclaimers in place specific to that offering. You have to make sure. And then for people, there's a whole other level of risk when you're talking about putting people into live groups or taking them into an online membership, right? Then you have a whole bunch of third parties that can interact with each other and talk to each other and sometimes say inappropriate things to each other in the context of your forum. And this is where you have to have additional language that gives you the right to remove people, you know, protects your groups against data scraping, right? So there's a whole host of of clauses that I have to put into terms of purchase for active online businesses, because there really is a very, very wide array of risks. Doesn't mean it's not worth doing. It is. You just want to make sure that you've got your terms in place. And so that's that third leg. Terms of purchase. And the other thing that terms of purchase do, if you do them right, is it protects your merchant account. Online businesses have a much greater opportunity for fraud. Online, it's called friendly fraud. So friendly fraud accounts for 86% of online fraud. And friendly fraud is where somebody buys your purchase, you know, your program, your offering, your digital course or whatever, consumes it, and then they just go to their credit card company and do a chargeback request, right? And this happens more often than you think it does, and it happens for a variety of reasons. How many times have you gotten a credit card statement where you're like, what is this? I don't even recognize that, like, and it's a couple months old, right? You can't even remember the purchase, and there's not a description that shows up very clearly in the small little line that you get on the credit card bill. So people accidentally will do chargeback requests because they just don't recognize what is showing up on that little line. Or maybe their spouse is the one that reviews the bills and they go, we didn't buy this. I don't know what this, you know, all sorts of reasons that chargeback requests happen. And unfortunately for small businesses, they're very expensive process to go through, because you are charged all of the add-on fees and stuff that accrue through the merchant account or the credit card company, because they have to undergo an investigation and they have to do all this stuff on their side. So by the end of that process, it regularly costs small businesses 2 to 3 times the amount of the original purchase to fight and defend a chargeback request. And so when you're talking about businesses that are getting in the 2, 3, 5, 8, like I just was working with a client who had a $16,000 chargeback. like you're getting into some real money. And terms of purchase will protect that process, because one of the first things that the credit card company or the merchant account will ask is, where are the terms of purchase, right? They get a chargeback request and they immediately want to see, what did the consumer, what did the person agree to? Do you track it in your system? So this is why when people go through my website protection package training, we talk about best practices. We talk about where all this language goes. We talk about the check the box style versus just the link embedded at the bottom of the website. Like, you need people to actively check the box that they consent to those terms and track that inside of your CRM system, right? So whether you're using a waiver, whether you're using Infusionsoft, that needs to be a trackable click so that somebody is signing off on those terms. And that way you can show the merchant account or the credit card company, here's the terms, they're plainly displayed, they have to acknowledge them before they can even purchase. And then once they read those terms, generally you are way more likely to actually win that chargeback dispute. So it protects your merchant account, and it protects, I've had clients reach out saying, if I get one more chargeback request, they're canceling my merchant account, right? It actually protects your merchant account, protects your ratings, because the other thing they can do is they can just keep bumping up the percentage fee that you pay to keep your merchant account open. So it really is a cost to your bottom line if you don't have terms in place that protect you against fraud, protects you against these chargeback requests. And then finally, so those are the 3 core documents, right? Website terms and conditions, privacy policy, and then terms of purchase for anything that you're selling. The final piece is, do you, based on what you're doing, are you required to have disclaimers related to your work, right? So we talked about one, the earnings and income disclaimer for business to business, especially where you're talking about sales or increasing earnings or anything that is business related that people might buy because they think it will make them more money, right? The FTC is really clear that they want to see a separate earnings and income disclaimer at the bottom of your website. Celeste is asking, yes, is the CRM separate from the website? It is. So CRM stands for, sorry, the little person coughing. CRM stands for Customer Relations Manager, right? And it basically is a way to conglomerate all of your email communications and track what are you sending to people, what's being opened. You can segment your list. So if you've got certain people that have opted into this product versus this one, you can track all of that. For people that are really going to be building online businesses, you want to track all of that data. And so a CRM is really essential. There's lots of options in the marketplace, and there's lots of options for different levels of businesses, but you could start by just Googling, what is a CRM? What CRMs are available for small businesses? Because you're going to start to see ones like Aweber. I mean, you can even, I know people who have run really legitimate businesses on the backs of like Mad Mimi or MailChimp. I mean, it's crazy. And those are some of the like, you know, $10 to $20 to $30 a month options. And then would a WordPress plugin policy generator be a good starting point? Wayne, that's a great question. Unfortunately, the answer is no. Here's the reality is that most of those generators are built for the business world at large. They're not built for your business. They're not built for the educational world. They're not built like, they're built for the world at large. And what this means is that you don't get policies that are actually very tailored to what you do and supportive of protecting your business. And so, although I wish I could say it's better than nothing, in some circumstances, it's not. I've seen people screw this up in so many ways. There was one gal who got a document from a friend that was one of these generators, right? And she was in Florida. We get on a phone call and she says, will you quickly review my documents? I think they're fine. I think they're good, but would you just take a quick look? And I said, do you know that you have to go to California to litigate anything related to your business? She was like, no, I didn't know that, right? Okay, my hubby's here. Oh, the juggling act. I was like, okay, my 2 small children are upstairs for a little bit. So long as I can hear them playing, I'm going to be okay with this. He's home. So Wayne, sometimes they're okay. In most instances, they're insufficient for a variety of reasons. And it's usually that they just don't have the language that people really need to protect specifically what they're doing and specifically how they're doing it. And that will also protect their business, right? It's, you know, I can't speak to all of them. There's quite a few out there, but usually most of those generators, you know, while they're free, there's some hook, like that's the lead in to a service or an offering or, you know, website monitoring or something else. And so just be very careful when you're looking at those options.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
I have a question in that, are there going to be certain things that I have to deal with since I'm working with teen girls? Because yesterday, one of the moms, I'm just launching a pilot program for the girls, and I'm only using friends right now, parent friends. Before, you know, just
got it. Your friends of yours, yes.
So I'm kind of doing my pilot, and the mom says, well, do you have something for us to sign on? Because you're going to be making money eventually. I said, well, I've done these programs before. I've just never done it into an online, like what you're talking about. So I appreciate what you're saying, because I did not think I needed to do a terms of purchase. I'm going to be talking to you about that. But she said, yes. I said, well, it's more of a focus group. The program is there. I just want them to watch it and then talk to me. It's like, oh, I like this, or do less of this, do more of this. But do I need a thingy for that too now?
This is a really good question. So I get this a lot, right? Because most businesses in this space, we all have to start somewhere, right? And so I get a lot of people, especially in the coaching world, who are saying like, oh, I'm doing a beta program, or I'm doing like a free 1-week version of what will be a 4-week course or whatever. And they're starting, and what I tell them is free does not mean free of risk, right? Even in the pro bono world, if I provide pro bono legal services, I still have to have a client agreement. I still have to treat them in every way like a paying client, prioritize their work, give them exactly the same, like, and in each of these businesses, it's the same. Free does not mean free of risk. You're still delving into topics that have liability. You're still working with people, and that brings liability into our business. And so I would still say, yes, you want client services agreements. Yes, you're probably going to need a waiver from each of those parents to be able to work directly with the minors and obtain their feedback, right? So you'd definitely be well advised to get that stuff in place so that you don't have one scenario where something goes sideways or a parent gets upset and you don't have a signed document saying that, you know, the work that you were going to do is okay. Yeah, great question.
And is that something that you do? Obviously, I'm sure you do, right?
Yeah.
So client agreement and a waiver. So this is going to start like this week. Is there something that, and since these are people that know me personally, can I create something quickie now?
Yeah, you probably
before
could.
It becomes.
What's the setup? So you're talking with the parents and then you're going and doing something specifically with the kids. Is it kind of like you're working with both parents and kids?
Well, that's kind of what's making me start. As much as it's a passion project, I'm wondering if I want to even do this because, yeah, so I'll be talking to the parents. And then, so my daughter's 15. So a few of her friends, I was telling them what I was doing and they were excited. And I've done this before. But they're all, oh yeah, I want to do something like this. So now I'm talking to the parents. It's like, okay, I talked to your daughters. They're really on board. They want to do this. So it's on image. So it's on body image. It's on self-talk and how they relate to themselves and to the world.
It's such important work. So I would say that's where your heart is.
But it's becoming a nightmare. And I've just started. Because I have to go to the parent first and sell the parent. And then the words and everything that I'm going to use to sell the parent's going to be very different for the girl. Because the girls aren't interested in confidence and body image. They want to look cute and be comfortable with them.
No, that's right. And let's be clear that anybody who works with minors in any capacity is selling the parent, right?
Yeah.
Or selling the children who then convince the parent. Like there are multiple ways of doing it, but ultimately it's the parent that needs to sign on the line, right? Minors cannot enter into contracts on their own behalf. And so the parent has to sign for them. The parent is the one that's going to have to sign up and presumably pay for that course. But, you know, I still think it's doable. right? If the messaging is right, and if the kids are on board and the kids are saying to the parents, I want to do this, hopefully they're getting the support, to be able to do that. But it would just be, and you'll learn as you test this out. If you ran the parents through a quick synopsis where they had to sign a basic agreement and, sign a waiver that you're able to work directly with the children, if you have somebody that puts up a stink to that, they're just not your client.
Yeah, that's what I was going to tell her. It's like, you know what, your daughter was interested, but I told her, I said, 30 years I've worked with adults. This has not come up before. I said,
what
so
was the issue that she was asking about?
She, I think, was wondering, she says, well, so you're doing a focus group. So you're talking to our daughters, presumably to make money later. I said, well, the program's actually done because I presented it. I've just never done it where it's pre-packaged. I've always done live events or the last few months Zoom.
Yeah.
So she says, oh, but one of their ideas might make you money. I'm like, well, I said, well, this is it's just feedback. They're also getting a lot of information, 5 weeks of information.
Well, let's be clear that this is how all businesses are run. My response to that comment is we all, in the process of running our businesses, get feedback from our clients that may change the way we deliver those services in the future. That is the process of being in business. And the alternative is if she doesn't want her daughter contributing ideas, then she's just not a fit. She's not your client. And so you could just say, here's the option, right? That just like any other business, I do get feedback from my clients.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, it's not a big surprise and it's not a big thing. It's not like you're going to have these girls, sign intellectual property agreements giving them rights to your business.
That's so true. And then share it with their friends. But that's very true because I was saying that. I said, I'm not asking them anything personal. I'm not divulging anything personal. I'm just handing them. Yeah. So thank you. I will talk to you then about the waiver for working with a minor and then a client agreement. So that would be right off the bat. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. But I mean, I would just be very direct about it. Like, if it's a focus group and I mean, what's the benefit to the girls? Is there a benefit to the girls for going?
They're getting 5 weeks of information. Like once a week, I'll be sending them the Zoom, not the Zoom, but the links.
Is it like some coaching information on these topics?
Yeah.
And being like, how did you feel about it? How, what are your thoughts? Yeah.
So they'll be getting the information and then once a week, if they're comfortable to talk on a Zoom, like what I liked, what I didn't like. And I told them, and then the rest of the hour is like, what came up for you? What can I help you with personally?
Totally. So yeah, the benefit to these girls is they get to increase their own awareness around body image and how they're being influenced by media. And right. So that's the selling point to the parent. You keep the conversation in that place. And if anybody has issues with the girls giving you feedback, you can just be like, oh, this is what every business that runs well does is they ask for client feedback on their services so that they can improve them. But if you don't want your daughter to participate, then, great.
Okay.
So just give them choice. No biggie.
But I do love what you were talking about with the agreement to this because I have never done a product before like this. And I think it's Wayne who's creating that. Yeah. Didn't even occur to me because I did have a chargeback to a client. So for those who are wondering, many years ago, I did all of it. We did the wardrobe, we did the shopping, we did everything. She moved I'm in California. She moved to Texas and then did a chargeback. I'm like, but I did it all. What? And I had nothing to stand on.
Right. That's right. And the number of times this has come up during COVID, because guess what? People are pinched. There are more chargeback requests happening now than ever before. The number of calls I've gotten from people about this issue of chargebacks, and it's because people are going to, unfortunately, if they're not ethical, going to be looking at any way possible that they can get some money back. And so people generally know if you go to your credit card company, you've got 6 months, there's a window of time from the date of purchase. You've got 6 months to request a chargeback. And, there's some other it looks like Bong already left. There are some other tips. Let me put these in because if you do have a merchant account right now, one of the ways to avoid friendly fraud, just a second. I'll pop a link in to an article that I wrote that has 10 steps for avoiding friendly fraud, because at a bare minimum, you guys should all be doing this with your credit, your merchant account. And it's just about what data you collect at the point of sale so that that purchase is trackable. So here, if you want to grab that link out of chat, that will help you just evaluate, do you have all of your protections turned on as part of your online sales process? And that way, you know, you can hopefully avoid some of the claims, some of the disputes that are fraudulent disputes, and actually be like, well, sorry, we actually collected the IP address at the point of purchase and it relates to the home address, which is where, you know what I mean? Which is also what shows up on the credit card statement. Like, it'd be very, very hard for somebody to claim a fraudulent charge, you know, made from their home address. Yes, Annalise says, I had a client do a chargeback because they didn't recognize the business name. You'll see in here, right? Number 9 on this list, ensure that the merchant descriptor is accurate, that it identifies your business. And sometimes you have to go study, like when you set up your merchant account, like where does that show up? What does it say? And change it so that as much as possible, somebody looks at that and goes, oh yeah, I remember that's what I bought, or that's the business that I worked with, right? And then also make your customer service easy. Put, you know, on the email confirmation after the purchase, if you have any questions, call us here or email us here. Make sure that people have a way to reach out to you and get support. And for most of us, you know, personally branded businesses, like, we have that, but a lot of times people will throw in the towel and they will make a chargeback request, especially with the larger companies, if they just can't get through and get support with something. So make support as easy as possible, right? And then make sure that you track that little terms of purchase box, that they have to click that before they buy. That is really, really key. Yeah, exactly. Yes, and to Annalisa's point, once people initiate a chargeback request, even if it was accidental like this, they just didn't recognize the name, once it started, you can't undo it. There's no, the client or the consumer can't call the credit card company and be like, whoops, take backs, undo that. Like, it just has to go through the process. And probably because otherwise people would be subject to threats or retaliation or other things if there was a chance to leverage the stopping of that process. But you can't. Like, I've had clients that have called their clients once the chargeback request was initiated, like, hey, it's me. Did you know that that's what you were disputing was, you know, the charge for my services, which I've delivered? And somebody will go, oh, you know, like this, I made a mistake, and they can't undo it. So that's why you have to really ensure as much front end protection as possible. Alrighty. Any other questions, you guys? You're welcome, Huda.
So I'll be reaching out to you then on that those 2 items.
Okay, no problem. I'll watch for that.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I gotta head out.
No worries.
All right.
Yep.
Bye-bye.
I will wrap it up if nobody else has any additional questions. Celeste, thanks for hanging in today. Annalise, great to have you here. What's the best merchant account? Okay, I see Celeste questions. What's the best merchant account? So again, this depends, right? There are a couple things you want to think about when it comes to a merchant account. It used to be, and I'm not sure how true this is anymore, because PayPal, obviously a ton of people use PayPal because most people have PayPal accounts. Like, the ease of use is high on PayPal, right? But it used to be that PayPal accounts were regularly frozen. Like, there were quite a few people that reported having issues with PayPal accounts if they ever did a big launch. Right? Okay. And so having a backup was kind of the thing to do, where you at all times want to have 2 merchant accounts, right? Which I do in my business. I use Square. Actually, I have 3. I use Square, I use Stripe, and I have PayPal. So okay. I would definitely just recommend looking at, where are you wanting to process payments? How are you wanting to do that, right? Because some people, especially if they're coaching, they might do all of their enrollment over the phone, like have sales calls, and they're literally just taking credit cards down over the phone at the point of enrollment. You want to make sure that you're working with a vendor that gives you an online, basically a virtual terminal, where you can process those through an online portal, which both Square and Stripe do. I don't think that PayPal does. And so, you know, look at your sales process, look at how you want people to be paying. Is it in conversation with you, or do you want somebody just to be able to show up on your site and purchase a session, right? Because in that instance, maybe PayPal is a good fit. Maybe having two options is a good fit. But just research, you know, what's out there. They're all truthfully pretty easy to sign up for. Stripe, to my recollection, Stripe, you have to be a little bit more technologically savvy because you're embedding code into your site. It's not as straightforward generally as Square or PayPal, but still works, and it allows you to process payments. Like I have it embedded into my invoicing system. So Stripe will allow you to take credit card, whereas, you know, PayPal is obviously payment directly from a PayPal account. So yeah, just look at options, but, you know, choose one and test it.
Okay.
You know, just go with it. Yeah.
This is great.
Oh, I'm glad it was helpful for you.
Yeah. Thank you so much for your time.
You're welcome, Celeste.
More sessions.
Good to connect with you.
You too.
Yes, take care.
You too. Okay.
All right. Yeah.
Thanks for all the great info today.
Oh, you're welcome, Wayne. You're so welcome. Glad to have you. Any other questions? We good? All right. Signing off. Thanks, you guys. Have a great week.